now we move on to the next team, and since we are going in the reverse order, uh, I think it's CSK or is it KKR?
CSK,
Yes.
CSK.
I wanted to confirm because I with CSK fans I never want to risk anything and I want to make sure
Yeah,
that
yeah.
they don't get offended.
One of the rare seasons where the tables were turned and MI and
Yeah,
CSK actually were bottom
truly,
two.
truly. Now, Dan, now that we have to talk about CSK, we have to talk about someone like Ben Stokes. We saw that CSK were trying to go after someone like Sam Curran. They
Yeah.
couldn't, and then they went for Ben Stokes. Uh, how do you think Ben Stokes fits into their 11? Because if you see their first 11 or the 11 that played the last time, their overseas spots were more or less fixed with Conway, Moin Ali, Pretorius, and one of Tikshana or Patirana. So who goes out if Stokes comes in? That's the most important question, I think.
Yeah, so I think there's several ways you can structure it up. I think he could look to potentially open ahead of a Devon Conway, for example, or also he comes in as an all rounder, but bats basically anywhere in the top seven. Comes in for say a Pretorius or something like that. I think that they're going to need a Tikshana in their group. I think that with him and Jadeja, and then the matchup options for Marinelli as well. They've got spin really nicely covered in that group. And that's kind of how I see it really. I think either opening or as an all rounder would be most logical. Stokes' numbers against spin aren't great. He's going to play presumably half his matches in Chapok as well, which is not ideal for him either. So I mean, personally, I think he's got a lot to prove. Personally, I think that he is overpriced, but it was obvious that was going to happen in advance of the auction, if that makes sense.
So do you think CSK will alternate between him and Conway at home and away? Maybe all Chepauk games Conway plays and all away games maybe Stokes play.
No, I think that they'll play Stokes regardless. I think that this is again a nod back to what we were talking about a little earlier about players being picked with a price tag in mind as well. I mean, I personally I think that any team who picks Ben Stokes is going to play them in every game, and this is again this is something that you've got to rationalise before you raise that paddle for the first time, basically.
Yeah.
Now,
So that means Pretorius misses out.
Yeah,
because Moin and Conway will have to play, and if
Yeah.
Pretorius misses out,
I think if they leave out Pretorius, then death bowling becomes a concern. I actually think
yeah.
what could happen is that in Chepok, they because Conway's game against spin is also quite good. We saw how Conway, in that first game of this World T20, how Conway's handled Zampa very well. I think what it's going to come down to is who plays between Moin Ali and Pretorius depending upon conditions. I think it's going to come down to that because Tikshana will play. I feel Tikshana will definitely play, and if they feel that they really need some meat in the death pooling, then they might play Pretorius and might leave out Moin Ali. Also, I feel somewhere MS Dhoni would be hoping that the uncapped pacers like Mukesh Chaudhary's, Simarjeet Singh's, and Tushar Pandey, they probably take a step further. And also, if you look at if Deepak Chahar's back, I think what they'll try and do is try and have the opposition 5 down by the 15th, 16th over, so that the damage at the death is minimized in some way or the other.
So when we talk in general, when this is out in the open now that KKR is a team that has struggled against pace, but it just went under the radar that CSK actually had the worst run rate against pace in last season. Do you think just an addition of Stokes covers for that? Because Raidu, Gaikwad, and even Jadeja had below average numbers last season, and these are predominantly their starters this season as well.
So I don't see that Stokes really changes a lot in that respect actually, and this is why I kind of questioned the purchase. It was for me it's almost like a purchase based on what he's done the other formats. Really, I think is and the name. I don't see him ticking off the problems that they have. So for me, their death bowling, as we've just spoken about, is a big red flag, and they haven't done anything to really solve that issue either. So look, this is where sometimes I think teams they look at the name rather than they look at the what they actually have to improve. And if CSK have like a bowling attack of a pace bowling attack of Deepak Chahar, Mukesh Chowdhury, and I don't know Shivam Dubey or something like that. I mean, where's the death bowling coming from? They've got spinners from Chana, Jadeja,
I mean, in CSK's, Dan, I get your point, but in CSK's defense, I want to bring this up that they tried to get Karan, they couldn't. They also tried quite hard to get someone like Jason Holder,
Mm-hmm.
who actually, with his cutters, could have been quite effective
Yeah.
in Chepauk. I know he doesn't have great numbers at death, but Chepauk is also not your standard T20 pitch. It gets actually very difficult to bat on that wicket as the
Yep.
match goes on. And someone like Holder, who has so much experience of playing on the slow and low tracks of Caribbean, would have been quite handy. So I think they tried to look for options which could have at least sorted their death bowling at home. But I just think that things couldn't fall apart from that. Things couldn't fall in place for them.
Mm, I have sympathy for that, but I do also think um I would have paid quite happily paid the same for Holder as I would have paid for Stokes. Not that I'm saying that Holder's worth that money, but I'm saying that I don't feel that Stokes offers a great deal more than Holder in this particular format. Maybe a bit more with the bat. Holder, I think, a fair bit more with the ball. So look, I think they did have options there. But yeah, no, I take your point. I mean, and this is the whole problem with this all-rounder market was that there was always going to be such a competition for players, and there was only going to be sort of 2 or 3 teams who could really afford the marquee guys.
Yeah,
And
fair
but
enough.
this is one question which is bound to be there, given a middle order of or a top 6 of potentially having Stokes,
Conway,
Shivam Dube,
Shivam Dube.
Jadeja, Moeen Ali, and Conway. So Dan, I mean, you always said it's better to have more left-handers and more right-handers.
Yeah. So about 75% of batters are right-handed. So yeah, a few left-handers, particularly on a venue that the assist spin might be quite useful for them. Look, with CSK, we've done this so many times. I'm sure you guys have done this before on shows. It's so easy to write them off before the start. So easy to say that they're brilliant and curious, but then they seem to be able to magic out one more year of performances. So it'll be fascinating to see what they do. I mean, personally, I don't think that their plans are great, but yeah, let's see.
Gurkirat, you're on mute.
Sorry, this happens quite a lot often with me. One last question before we move on. What do you make of the Kyle Jamieson buy? Because the one season that Kyle Jamieson has had in the IPL, it wasn't a great one, and he actually did play a few games in Chepauk in the first half of 2021 IPL. Uh, do you think it's a buy because maybe CSK feel that if they play on venues like Wankhede, maybe some to maybe Eden Gardens to some extent, and maybe Chepauk, maybe Chinnaswamy, that his height could be a factor in terms of bowling because uh, he doesn't make the New Zealand squad as well. So I want to understand from you that what could be the logic of selecting someone like Kyle Jamieson.
Well, obviously, there's the New Zealand connection with Stephen Fleming as head coach already, so you would imagine that the two players, the player and coach, are known to each other. I think Jameson offers some useful skill sets. Obviously, the height is a point of difference, and at his best, I think that we've seen that teams did compete for him in previous auctions at big prices. And one of my notes of CSK was they needed another bowler who can bat, and so they've picked him up, and he can do that as well. So I think it's a bit like the Jai Richardson purchase for MI, in that you're picking up what some people describe as a distressed asset, if you like, where you've got someone who's previously shown ability, previously shown potential, been bid on and then got for vast sums and then got released, and then they're being picked up now cheaply with a view to trying to help them realise that form of potential, if you like. So I mean, I don't mind the Kyle Jameson purchase at all. Really, I think that in terms of risk, that's the low risk potential, high reward that could be achieved. Whereas obviously Stokes or Cameron Green is high risk, high reward.